Sallim Ajma'in. Brothers and sisters in Islam, I'd like to thank you all for joining us on this webinar tonight, which basically deals with foreign exchange as well as the transfers of funds into the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to our e-wallets to cover the cost of our Hajj packages that inshallah will start going live in the month of February. So not too many days left, inshallah, for these funds to be transferred. And before we start, I'm going to introduce a panel of banking experts that we've been able to join us on this particular webinar. First of all, my name is Shaheen Isop. I'm a financial services industry employee, as well as a member of the board of SAHUK as a volunteer, and also the lead guide for this particular entity, inshallah. Should we be successful in acquiring the minimum number of pilgrims that will go to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, we will have guides that will basically accompany our pilgrims. But before we start, from Absa Islamic Banking, we've got with us Janil Haskins. Janil is the Executive International Banking and Foreign Exchange Specialist from Absa. For those of our pilgrims and potential pilgrims that are bankers with Absa. We also have with us Rufaida Hamilton. She's the head for payments South Africa for the Standard Banking Group. Welcome, Rufaida and Janil. And then we've got Sumendran Pillay, who's the foreign exchange specialist for FNB, also part of the panel. The process that we're going to go through, I'm going to give a backdrop. We're going to ask each of the panelists to basically give an indication as to what is permissible in terms of transfers out of South Africa into the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia as a result of the exchange control regulations that we are bound by, which has been put into place by the South African Reserve Bank. So I think it's imperative that we understand that, and imperative that we understand the processes that each of these banks have, because they may differ from, or tweak from bank to bank, but essentially they are all governed by the dictates of the South African Reserve Bank foreign exchange control policies. The importance that we need to understand, and especially from a point of view that right now, alhamdulillah, the rand-dollar exchange rate is at one of its most favorable that we've seen in the last 2 to 3 years at 16.25 when it closed in the market this afternoon. And that relates to a Saudi Riyal rate of about 4.33, and that is the spot rate. Please understand, when we talk about spot rate, it may not be the rate according to which you would be transferring funds into the country, because there is a bid and an offer rate, and the bankers will be able to give you a little bit more clarity in relation to that particular process. We're going to field questions a little bit later, inshallah, and hopefully if we can get through the program within the next half an hour, then we'll leave a half an hour for questions and answers, and we will then conclude by 9 o'clock with the necessary closures. I'm going to please request that every participant at this point in time just keep your mics on mute, and as a result, it will make it a lot easier that there's no cross-talking, and everybody would be able to listen attentively and follow the process and follow the information that we have. So just now addressing to the bankers. As you've been informed, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has basically changed the process for Hajj. We're in what we call a direct Hajj model, and that direct Hajj model means that there is an e-wallet in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia that needs to be funded by the prospective pilgrims that are on this program from the different countries around the world. Now, countries that don't have foreign exchange restrictions obviously have an ease in terms of transferring those funds. But within South African legislation and within the frameworks of the financial services processes, we have exchange control regulations and restrictions that are placed on us. So I'm going to ask, and I'm going to probably start with you, Janil, if you could possibly just give some background into, what pilgrims or prospective pilgrims who are bankers with Absa or banking clients of Absa, could do in terms of transferring the funds. What is the format in which they would do it, via their debit cards, their credit cards, and possibly also EFTs. Janelle, if you'd like to please unmute your mic and join us on the discussion.
Thank you so much, Hain, and wassalamu alaikum to all of our clients online. Thank you for the opportunity and the session. So by way of introduction, I'm Janelle Haskins, and I look after the Forex and International Banking for Absa Bank, predominantly looking after our retail private wealth segments within the personal and private banking space. So I think you've raised a very important element around the regulatory component. We are, from a South African perspective, obviously governed by exchange control, governed by FinServ, South African Reserve Bank, etc. So all payments leaving the country or coming into the country is obviously reported into the Reserve Bank. Now, you as an individual, myself, a resident of the Republic, we have to comply with those South African regulations, as it were. And for an individual, in order for us to remit these funds, each and every person is allowed what we refer to as a single discretionary allowance of 1 million rand, which is runs for the calendar year. That's the 1st of January to the 31st of December. And under the 1 million single discretionary allowance, obviously, there's various payments clients could make. But in this instance, from a travel perspective, the funds that you remit from an offshore perspective would come off that specific allowance. Now, over and above the 1 million, there's also a 10 million, predominantly for capital transfers, or what we refer to investment allowance. Now, as an individual traveling for our pilgrims that'll be traveling, in effect, and obviously through the process that you will follow in terms of securing your making land arrangements or your air ticket arrangements, if you are doing it through the package, it will obviously come off of that specific single discretionary allowance. Now, whilst all of us, in authorized dealers, banking industry, have various mechanisms to move this money, similarly, Absa also have various products that you would use and mechanisms in order to channel these funds out of the Republic. So in effect, international transfers would predominantly be used in this space to facilitate, making payment for your travel arrangements. And in effect, this will be used through the SWIFT mechanism, whereby you would, in effect, do an international payment. So Absa have our banking or international banking facility to do that through your online application that's on mobile or web-based. And you would be able to make that transfer from South Africa into whichever jurisdiction you require to move the funds into your wallet, specifically for any currency of your choice. Now, conversely, we also have currency accounts. A lot of our clients will have international savings by virtue of having our foreign currency accounts are referred to as currency investment accounts. We offer over 18 currencies by which you can actually have currency by deposit into those specific accounts. They are reported as cross-border transactions, but they're housed locally. Now, for this purpose too, if you aren't going to transact out of your Rand account and convert into currency and directly transfer that offshore, you could simultaneously, if you have a currency holding, do the transfer directly out of that currency account from an offshore perspective. What's quite exciting for us from an Absa perspective is our currency accounts are Sharia compliant. So we do have an Islamic banking currency account, which obviously subscribes to the Mudaraba principles around profit sharing, because some of these currency accounts do, in event, the conventional product accrues interest, but from an Islamic perspective, it subscribes to the Mudaraba profit sharing. And we do have, it's past the Sharia Council. We do have certificates applicable to these specific accounts. And if you have that specific currency account, you can also make that transfer from an offshore perspective. Now, coming back to the single discretionary allowances, if for travel over and above, what you're paying for your land, air ticket, etc. arrangements, you might want to take, spending money for your allowance on the other side, spending, etc. We also have products linked to that. So we've got our foreign bank notes, and then we've obviously got currency cards, which are also applicable from a transactional perspective if you're not going to be using your credit cards. So you could simultaneously, out of those currency accounts, directly transfer into the currency cash passport card that we've got in order for you to transact whilst you're abroad from a spending perspective. And then simultaneously, you can split that between the currency card and have cash notes. For the specific pilgrimage, Absa is offering 0 fees on our commission associated with foreign banknotes, and that'll run from January to December, Shaheen. And I think that's quite important for our pilgrims who will be traveling as they think holistically and comprehensively around their travel arrangements and what the banks have to offer for them.
Janil, let me just stop you there for 5 seconds. Thank you very much for the comprehensive, input. I think the key is at this particular point in time, whilst you talk about, the cash component, the key is if you've got a client with a debit card or a credit card with yourselves, can they transfer up to maybe 350 or 400,000 rand, from South Africa into the e-wallet in Saudi Arabia? What would they need to do? Would they need to inform the bank? I know credit cards have a limit of about 50,000 rand per transaction, and you can't go beyond that. So it's best to possibly utilize a debit card, either associated to Visa or to MasterCard, to be able to do that, provided there's enough cash in your account. Am I correct?
Yes, so you can use your credit card for that spend. There's the 50,000 as you correctly relate to. But remember, on the other side, you will pay the conversion fee. And that is probably between 2 and 3.75% from the merchant in terms of a conversion fee on the other side. So at that point in time, you'll pay the conversion. And the reason why I mentioned the products that I did and what options are available here before you go travel, you are hedging your exchange rate risk on this side, buying the currency. You've taken care of the exchange rate. So the funds that you'll be using on the other side has already been converted from that perspective.
Okay. So if I understand you correctly, then you're offering a foreign currency account that people can actually open here. And from that foreign currency account, they can do what is necessary, to transfer the money into the e-wallet. Obviously, you're going to have less fees, except for the exchange control, not exchange control, the foreign exchange fees that you need to basically acquire. Neil, thanks. We're going to come back to you. There are a few questions, but we're going to come back to you a little bit later. Rufaida, can I bring you onto the conversation as well from a Standard Bank perspective and the Standard Bank clients that are out there? Perhaps if you could please just give some indication as to what Standard Bank is offering and how Standard Bank would be able to assist its clients in transferring these funds across, to the e-wallet. Rufaida?
Assalamu alaikum. And thank you so much for having us on your panel. Really excited to share whatever we can to help our pilgrims on this very, very exciting and significant journey in their lives. So I think the first thing is to say Janil's covered so much of what is conventionally available across all of the participating banks in the country, and particularly with Standard Bank. Obviously, we've got a dedicated Sharia banking team. So anyone on the call is welcome to contact myself, Zanaria. Amin is also on the call if you have any specific questions after this and want to be directed more on a personal note. So certainly from us, that offer is welcome. But I think just to say one of the biggest things around cross-border transactions is to demystify it, because so many, ordinary South Africans don't often have the luxury of making cross-border payments or being involved in them on a daily basis. So a journey like this is a significant one, both in terms of spend and in terms of an emotional and spiritual commitment. The aim from our team is to make that as seamless and as easy as possible. So we want to take the anxiety out of that. That's the first thing. Janil's covered a lot of the why the cross-border transaction regulation exists. It really is there to protect us as a country, to protect our clients. Fraud is a big aspect as well, which I'm going to talk a little bit about. But let's go to what we offer you. So the first thing is, I want to just parallel it to doing normal traditional card transactions that you do on a daily basis, just to take away that anxiety and the complexity that seems to exist around cross-border payments. So the Nusuk platforms allow you to top up your wallet. You mentioned it in your previous webinar. You referenced it as well. it makes it really simple. It's as easy as doing an Uber wallet type of activity. Even Amazon or lots of local outfits and e-commerce providers offer you a wallet scenario where you literally are funding those wallets. And you can do that using an electronic payment. So you'll do a cross-border payment and through our electronic channels, and I'll speak a little bit about that. Or you can use a card product, and card services will include a debit card or a credit card. And all of these are available from us. And obviously, depending on the products that you have with us, it just would mean that you understand the implications of using those and the fees associated with that, because we've got quite a range of participants on this webinar. I can't tell you what product they've signed up for, but that's also quite important to understand. The credit card scenario, probably everybody on the call has already made a credit card payment on an e-commerce site. Very similar experience as well when you are uploading or topping up your wallet in this regard. Important things to note whenever you're using a card transaction, particularly on an e-commerce site, is to be careful, prudent with your card details and your CVV numbers, although the Nusuk platforms are designed to create a more streamlined and safe experience. So that already is quite a strong safeguard that takes away a lot of the anxiety that we find associated with high value transactions, which these traditionally will be for a lot of participants. Junaid, I'm going, okay, you're muted. Then the card transactions, Janelle's also spoken to it, they involve costs, because typically what you are doing, unlike when you transact on Takealot or Amazon in the country or any of the local e-commerce sites, is that you are making a cross-border payment. You're paying for paying for a service, a hospitality package, and other services in a different currency, technically. So that conversion effort, as well as the exchange rate applicable to that, does incur fees, and that is what you will see on your statement typically when you do a cross-border payment. Those are very discernible fees, so you shouldn't have any surprises along the way. But if you want to be really clear about the value of the transaction, the amount of the cross-border fee, as well as what you could be in for in terms of the exchange rate fluctuation, you're more than welcome to contact our teams and we can guide you a little better. Then on a cross-border transaction, if you are on our digital platforms, and we've got a variety of them, everything from our Shift platform to normal digital platforms, you can either do one of two things. You can do a normal electronic payment in the way that you do normally domestically in South Africa when you move from my account to your account, Shane, for example. What is different, though, for a cross-border payment is that we require a bit more information. Why we require that information is so that we can report that transaction, so that our regulators know that you have used or consumed a certain amount of your single discretionary allowance. It's early in the year, so typically people still have a good value into that million rand in terms of consumption of that. And secondly, we need that information so that we can be sure that it is landing in the right recipient wallet account on the Nusuk side. And that's why it's important that we get additional information. What you will also be asked for, which sometimes floors people, is what is the reason and the reason code for your transaction. And that can be quite confusing. The good thing about this is it's very obvious what you're using it for. It's not a gift. It's not an investment. It literally is for travel purposes, and you can tick either travel as a non-resident client or travel as a resident client. The IBAN is important. That is already referenced quite extensively on the website. You spoke about it in your previous webinar. That is a unique IBAN number. That's an international banking account number that is associated with the account that you register on the platform. So quite important, you follow the steps, you've gone through them so well the last time. Once you get the IBAN number, that's your key. And that's what links your name, your surname, all your other information associated with your registration to your payment. We spoke about the limits. We spoke about using our digital platforms. I think what's important is also on our Shift platform, you can hold foreign currency in various currencies from dollar to pound, assuming here most people are going to do a dollar to Saudi Riyal conversion, in which case those are available and you can use that at a given point in time. If you, for example, purchase that foreign currency tomorrow and you want to take advantage of that rate up front, you have the opportunity to do that in the Shift app as well.
Can I just interject here for a second, Rufeda, if you don't mind? So yes, thank you for clarifying and for demystifying quite a number of things. The question that I have is, right, on your Shift process, your Shift card that comes with that account, is it a Visa card account? So that means that if I, as a pilgrim or a potential pilgrim, transfers my money from rands into US dollars into that account, I could use that Shift account or that Shift card and fund the e-wallet in the Nusuk system directly. So then that would probably become the cheapest routing, if you ask me, from a point of view that I'm going to be paying, my exchange rate fees for South African rand into dollars in South Africa. And when I transfer that into Saudi Arabia, I'm probably only going to spend 1 cent or 1.5 cents in terms of the conversion from dollars into reals, because that's a fixed, exchange rate between the US dollar and the Saudi real. It doesn't fluctuate. So I think that is one of the aspects that our Hujjaj or potential Hujjaj are most looking for from all three banks. What is going to be the cheapest options? What is going to be the most effective options? And most importantly, what is going to be the shortest duration of time in terms of funding that wallet? Because the luxury of time, unfortunately, is not what we have right now. And as a result of which, we need to make sure that if we're going to utilize any one of the debit cards or the Shift card, from a Standard Bank point of view, that it goes into the account within 24 hours, it must reflect in the e-wallet. If we go the cross-border payment transaction where we've got to do an interbank through SWIFT, that could take a week. That could take up to 10 days, because we've seen that going through. It first has to go to, Bank of New York. From Bank of New York, it's got to go into the bank that is associated to the e-wallet, in that particular area. Rufeda, don't go anywhere. Janelle, you wanted to come in here quickly?
I want to say, though, before Janelle comes in, Shane, you don't need us on this call. You know a hell of a lot.
No, please.
No,
you really don't.
We all, when you're in financial markets, we all follow the same processes. Yeah. So Shaheen, through SWIFT, and somebody's asked in the comment section, and maybe I can answer that as well. So even if you do SWIFT, you've got various payment options. Earlier you referred to spot. Now, when you look at the exchange rate, yes, spot is where it's traded at. However, there's various tenors associated with the spot rate. So for dollars, you can settle same day value. Other currencies as well, your pound and euro, depending on your payment currency and trading cutoff times. But in effect, you can do a transaction for value today, which means a transaction can be settled on the same day. You can do a transaction for value settlement tomorrow. And ultimately, your spot actually refers to a 2-day value settlement process, irrespective of the intermediary bank. So it shouldn't take longer than a week. Anything outside of the 2-day tenor becomes a forward exchange contract. So in effect, SWIFT can deliver a same-day value and get the payment settled for you on the same day. Okay.
Janelle, just hold on there. Sumendran, I want to bring you in on the discussion. Don't go away, Janelle. Don't go away, Rufeda. I need to bring the FNB, representative on as well. Sumendran, if you can just, turn your camera on and unmute your mic and then join the conversation. I'm sure you're having a look at the comments. There's a lot of questions. Yeah, there's a lot of questions coming through, and some of them are specific to your various banks. So, I think imperative that if you guys can, maybe just respond to those questions as well. So, Mendran, do you want to give some comment from an FNB perspective in terms of, how you're going to help the FNB clients that are on this call, in terms of the process?
Okay, thanks, Shane, and good evening to the panel. Thanks for the opportunity for having me this evening. My colleagues from the other banks have covered everything quite nicely. I mean, ranging from your SDAs to the different products that you can use whilst traveling. I think what stands out for me at FNB is the exchange control regulation of the 50,000 Rand transactions that can be processed using your debit and your credit card through an online channel. In this case, the wallet, all right? So at the moment, our systems are built around that 50,000 Rand limit, whereby if you were to enter your card details, the transaction will reject on our side because we're now contravening the exchange control regulation, right? The option that we will provide to our customers, and similar to Janelle's point, we can, I mean, SWIFT payments are relatively quick. It can be processed through our digital channels, which is online banking or the banking app. All right. It's just a matter of timing. But like I say, they're quick, but it would be a global payment on our side. So a bank-to-bank transfer from FNB to the beneficiary bank, and then the funds would then need to be allocated into the wallets on that side. Because look, I mean, we've been down this road with similar cases where transactions above 50,000 rands were not going through, and that revolves around that 50K limit that the regulator has put in place.
Okay, so I understand that from a credit card point of view, but we have been speaking to different pilgrims or prospective pilgrims, and I must say, through the grace of the Almighty, they've been using their debit cards as well, and debit cards are actually working quite nicely because it's linked to their current account or their checking accounts or their foreign exchange transactional accounts, and that seems to be working pretty well. But I think the important factor here is that you guys are all speaking the same language in terms of any contraventions from a point of view of the Reserve Bank regulatory processes. And secondly, that there are different options. Janelle, you spoke about the T+0, which is the instantaneous SWIFT payment, or T+2, which is your normal settlement through SWIFT. We also spoke about the foreign currency card or account system that can be utilized. For me, the important thing is going to be for these clients or for these pilgrims to specifically reach out to yourselves or to reach out to your foreign exchange teams, at the various banks to try and get some assistance in this particular regard, where they are finding difficulty in that way. Maybe what we should do is look at one or two of the questions and see if we can respond, to that. Sumendran, you mentioned, for example, the 50,000 limit. One of the participants on the call says, I have a query regarding a credit card transaction made today. I attempted to top up my Nusuk wallet using my FNB credit card. I have made similar top-ups successfully in the past. Today, I attempted to load 2,000 Rand, 2,000 Saudi Riyals. I completed the verification via the app, and after which Nusuk displayed the error which stated contact your bank. Now, that is probably because it got rejected through a process that this particular person may have reached the limit of 50,000 Rand, and as a result, you could have had that particular issue, unless there's a different underlying reason why that was rejected. Would we then say perhaps that this person contacts you directly, Sumenran, so that you can maybe give some guidance?
Sure. Let me respond to that. What I'll do is I'll pick that discussion up with that particular individual, and I'll refer that through to our card division, because Forex and card, we're two different departments.
Yes.
But we'll get that investigator just to check why the 2,000 Riyal payment didn't go through via the wallet.
Okay, Razina, I think important that you perhaps privately just share your number with Sumendran so that he can, get card division from FNB to deal with you. Rufaida, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about the timing questions because there seems to be a common theme, if I'm reading right, Shaheen.
Yeah.
I think it is a good question, and I think there is a perception, and it's an old perception that electronic cross-border payments, which really is the easiest option given the value that some of the participants or potential pilgrims will be investing. And in that case, I think the complexity with the timing has always been, like you said, it has to go to a bank, correspondent bank, and then it moves to the recipient bank account held by Nusuk and the Saudi authorities. But that process has eased in terms of velocity and how quickly it settles, especially if, like I said upfront, you get all your details right, you choose the right reason code, and there are guides for that that we have on our website. The Shift app particularly, and Amin's just kindly posted a lot of information on this in the chat on it. Also is it takes away a lot of the noise around delays in delivery of the funds, because you're looking at mostly intraday settlement. So I think that's quite important. There's some certainty as well in terms of how quickly you'll see those funds. But there's traceability as well. So even if you don't use a platform like Shift and you use a normal digital platform, you can always contact your bank or any of our relationship managers, and they can tell you where in the value chain that payment is. And if there is a problem, we can help resolve it quite quickly.
Thanks very much for that, Rufeda. And I think, at this point, one of the things that is very, very important to make mention to all the people out there, and this is from not from a South Africa banking point of view, but from the Nusuk e-wallet point of view. If for whatever reason you fund your e-wallet and you basically are unsuccessful, that you will not go for Hajj this year, when you request a repatriation of that funds, the repatriation of funds will go back into the account that you have submitted it from South Africa. So be very, very cautious and careful that if you're going to be utilizing accounts, use your own account. If you're using a third-party account, make sure it's your mother's or your brother's or somebody within your family that you're going to be able to get that funds back. Because if, for example, you're going to, I've seen this in the past. There's an organization, a third-party foreign exchange organization, where people utilize them to do SWIFT transfers out of the country. If you're going to utilize those people, their bank account is going to be the one that the repatriation or the refund will go towards. So we need to be very, very careful. We use our personal accounts. We use, whatever business or family accounts we're going to use. But those are the accounts that in the event you're unsuccessful, that the money will be repatriated. There's also, you need to look at the terms and conditions on the Nusuk system to make sure you're okay with the bank charges or with the fees in terms of a refund if you're not successful for Hajj. And also bear in mind that coming back into the country, exchange control rates change, not exchange control, but foreign exchange rates change. You could be on a trying to sell, Saudi riyals or US dollars, and the buy rate versus the sell rate is going to be different. So you can't be expecting to get the same rate that you transferred out of the country. This is important for people to understand. Janelle, do you want to come in here?
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on. That's also a very important point, Shaheen, because typically the principle, across banks is bank sells high, sells you high and buys low. So you typically can't expect the same exchange rate that you probably paid for when you bought the currency and expect the higher rate when you're returning the funds. And the important point that you're making around the repatriation or the remittance back into the Republic, remember also, whether you've got a currency account, the funds coming back into that account or coming into a RAND account, the settlement is not automatic. The funds will go into what is referred to the bank's Nostro account, because again, from a regulatory perspective, and Rufeda mentioned it earlier, again, there's reporting that happens to the Reserve Bank on the funds coming back into the Republic. And once we've satisfied that from a regulatory, the funds will be then settled into the beneficiary or nominated account that the client has elected. And also further to that point, I think it's important for everyone to understand that when you're remitting those funds, we've got SWIFT addresses. So Absa's got a SWIFT that they use. FNB's got a SWIFT address that they use. Absa's got a SWIFT. Your SWIFT code is also quite important when you're repatriating. So also happy to reach out to any of the colleagues here in your banks to understand what information needs to be given in order for the funds to come back into the Republic and for it to be reportable and obviously for it to be settled in the nominated account. And also just remember, there's a 30-day period in which you actually have to clear those funds out of the Nostro. If the banks don't receive a settlement instruction to release those funds automatically get returned. And that's quite important within the 30-day period that those funds are then settled once you get the notification that funds have arrived for your designated account. And more importantly, to your point around the fees and the charges, because remember, there are fees associated with the receiving bank for charges that will come off of that amount coming here. Alternatively, there's obviously three options. It's either you take on your own fees. There's foreign bank charges, there's local bank charges that you take on. So also understand funds coming back will be less fees and charges, same as when you are remitting funds out of the Republic.
Okay, Janil, Rufeda, I see your hand. I'm going to come back to you now. Here's a quick question that's come up to the chat. If you top up your wallet using the debit or credit card and these transactions were successful, are there any documents that need to be submitted for foreign exchange control after the transaction?
I was actually going to answer that question. So no, they aren't, because we do that. You're already onboarded as a client when you get a debit or credit card from a bank, any bank. And when you transact on that card cross-border, we will already be reporting that transaction on your behalf. So you don't need any additional documentation, but
Thanks.
It does come out of your discretionary limit.
Yeah,
and also to say, I think the refunds are one thing when you not successful, but when there is a genuine need for cancellation, Shane, I think you highlighted this previously, to be very aware of the cancellation policies and what fees will be associated with that. Firstly, by the Nusuk, in terms of what the platform is saying, because their providers obviously apply those. And then secondly, when you have to repatriate those funds, what that will mean as well. So there's a bit of a double impact potentially in some cases.
Perfect. I think this is something for all three of you. Perhaps a lesson learned from the system. With regards to the approval of funds and so forth. Give me 1 second. I just want to go. There's questions are coming in fast and furious. It is requested that all banks to start a document to document these advices and instructions as given tonight, and perhaps an FAQ or a fact sheet for each bank, which they could possibly place on the website or share with prospective clients. And I think that's going to help quite considerably, because remember, this is the primary, or shall I say, the initializing year for the Nusuk system. As we go forward, it's going to become easier. But instead of regurgitating as we go forward, perhaps if we have documents, to make it easily understandable from Absa, Standard Bank, as well as FNB, it certainly would help in that particular regard. Any other comments that you guys want to make, Sumeran or Janil?
No, absolutely. So, I mean, look, just a couple of things on my side. So whilst we're restricted by the 50,000 Rand sub limit on your ZAR debit and credit card, I've mentioned to you that you can process a payment you can process a global payment. So that's a bank-to-bank transfer via SWIFT. And if any of the guys that holds global accounts, so that's our currency accounts, we usually offer them in 9 currencies, but 3 of them's got actual physical cards linked to them. So that's your pound, euro, and dollar. Because those funds are essentially technically considered offshore, it's now sitting in currency in those global accounts. That's a product that will be able to work via this channel because it falls outside of the SARB ruling, right? So if there's any of the guys that holds global accounts with actual physical cards or virtual cards, because it is dollar-based, euro, pound-based, I mean, look, there'll be a cross-currency conversion fee that applies, but because it's a currency account technically seen and sitting offshore, they'll be able to use that global account to make a payment via this online channel.
Okay, so there's a question here. Are there limits on the FNB global accounts in terms of cross-border transaction?
So look, I mean, let me put it. So transactional limits, look, they come with default limits, which you can view on the banking app. You can up those limits, and that will accommodate for both your point of sale, ATM withdrawals, as well as your online transactions. So It does come with default limits, which you can then increase.
Okay, thank you for that. Amin, you want to come on quickly? Hassan?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam.
I'm definitely not a payment expert, and I'm sure Rufeda, Janil, or Sumeran can answer this. But my understanding of that 50,000 Rand limit is if it's a point of sale transaction out of the country, non-travel related. And so I think maybe we just need to clarify that should you utilize your debit or credit card as an online transaction to top up the Nusuk wallet, because it's directly travel related, that 50,000 limit may not apply. At least experientially, from my side, it didn't apply last year or the year before. And the transaction was processed and approved. So maybe, but the payment experts must clarify, because it's direct travel related, it may not trigger the 50,000 Rand limit.
And so if I may just interject before you guys go, which bank are you currently with?
Standard Bank.
Let me just put you into the picture, Sumendran, and for everybody on the call, Amin is basically the head of Islamic banking at Standard Bank.
Okay, cool.
But if I could just come in, so Amin is actually correct. The 50,000, and I'm sure a lot of us have traveled and had to pay air tickets for multiple family members, quickly racks up over the 50,000. So you definitely can, and it definitely is for travel purposes and exclusion to the 50K. That's my understanding. Don't know, Sumendran, if you apply a different rule.
Rufaida, I think we must just clarify that. I tell you why. Because at the end of the day, remember, if I'm buying tickets for my family members extended, I'm paying for it in South Africa. So if I pay R500,000 Rand off that account in South Africa, it's not an issue. It's going to come off my 1 million, allowance for the calendar year. But if I'm making an international payment from my credit card, according to the South African Reserve Bank regulations and the subscripts to that, it basically indicates that you can make a payment of up to 50,000 Rand at one particular go. We have to just clarify that with SARB. Perhaps you guys have got connections or people who contact the SARB all the time, and double check that and make sure that we're within that regulatory process. If you guys just hold on one sec. Nazira, I see your hand. I do apologize. I'm not ignoring you. I do note that you've asked questions in the in the chat. Do you want to ask a question live?
Assalamu alaikum, Jazakallah, Uncle Shaheen. This is Nazira. I just have a quick question. I think it'd just be maybe have a bit more clarity if I just ask it verbally so that there's no confusion. Sure. For a lot of us, I think with the Nusuk, the timeline is going to be the biggest issue of this. Seeing as the sales will likely go live in the beginning of February, we have just over a week to top up quite a large sum of money into the account. Being a FNB account holder, I just want to raise the question to Sumendran to see what would he advise to be the quickest way. Would you suggest that an EFT versus a credit card or debit card transaction will be the quickest and safest to get that full amount of money in basically on the day, basically within the day into the wallet?
If you just put your mic on mute, Sumendran, you want to basically give some comment on that?
Yeah, look, I mean, global payments. So remember, when you're processing transactions via your debit and credit card, right? There's a lot of dependencies to get into the e-wallet space of Nusuk. However, global payment, we can have the process within a day, right? We can trace the payment as well, all the way up to Saudi, for credit to then be, well, for the credit to go into the actual wallet in itself. But that's the two options, right? It's just that I see the concerns being raised around the 50K limit. I did invite our exchange control team. Unfortunately, probably they wasn't able to make it, but I'll provide official feedback to all FNB customers pertaining to the 50K limit and potentially provide them with solutions, because I do see there's quite a bit of concerns with respect to this 50K limit.
If I can come in here, from what Rufaida has said and what Janil has basically indicated, it is probably the best from a point of view of trying to put maybe 300,000 or 400,000 to do a cross-border transaction, via your bank through a SWIFT structure. And then you basically do it for immediate payment. It may cost you a few Rand more in terms of your fees, or if you want to do it over 2 days, do that. But this is where the thing where the process becomes sticky. If any of your IBAN numbers or any of the information is slightly out, you're not going to have your e-wallet, topped up with regards to that funding. And this is what one needs to be cautious about in terms of that situation. As Rufaida had mentioned a little bit earlier, the information that is, is important to basically bring forth is all the information that needs to be associated with that e-wallet account. So your e-wallet is there. When you top it up with a credit card or with your debit card, it's direct. It goes in directly. If you, Nazira, and various other participants on this call, if you've got a debit card and you can raise your limit on your debit card to call it 300 or 400,000, and you can then fund that particular e-wallet like that, that is probably going to be the best, understanding that you're going to pay that extra 2% because you're going to be transferring rands into dollars and dollars into Saudi riyals before you can get that money into your e-wallet. Alternatively, try and reach out to your transactional bankers at FNB, which is your bank, and see if they can assist you. Rufaida?
I just thought there was a question, which was probably a very valid question, about where someone was saying, if I'm the family member paying for 8 family members who are joining me, does it count towards my SDA? And unfortunately, it does.
Yes.
So it's per individual. There are obviously exceptions for young people or children under 18, but it does apply, unfortunately.
Yeah, so the important thing is when you're doing that kind of situation, if you've got family members who've got their own bank accounts, it's better to do it out of theirs. That way it doesn't impact on your SDA. But if you're doing it out of one account, that SDA is going to be impacted in terms of the situation that we deal with.
Yes.
Janine, do you want to comment?
So if I can just come in there. So obviously the 1 million are for adults, taxpayers, etc. Children have a 200,000 allowance, same as the adults. But also, whether you're doing it out of one account, in effect, what will happen is through the bank, there's third-party payments that can be done for each of the individual members if it's being funded. But principally, the transaction gets reported to the Reserve Bank for each of the individual members or people. But the safest, obviously, or the simplest option is if you're going to do it against each individual person, and depending on where they bank, so each individual might have different bank accounts. But it's important, let's say in a household, if there's a husband and wife, you've got your 1 million, wife's got their 1 million, and then the children have their 200,000 allowance that's applicable for this as well.
Fantastic. Thanks, Janil. I think as we're going along, we're responding to the questions in the in the chat group. But I do believe that the best way that this is going to be beneficial to the pilgrims out there, all of the pilgrims on this call and wider than this, obviously deal with all 3 of the banks, perhaps even more. But important to have a conversation with your bankers. Important to make sure that your bankers can assist you and guide you in terms of making the best possible decision for that cross-border payment in order to minimize any of the anxieties and also minimize any of the delays or any of the latency that is associated with any of the cross-border payments. So just from that perspective, I think we have exhausted, because we can't talk through this whole process. Standard Bank's got its products, FNB as well as Absa. From my side and from the side of the South African pilgrim, I'd like to thank each one of you from the bottom of my heart, and to Amin, who's also on the call, and whoever else from the banking sector that's on the call, to come forth and to assist us to try and make this as seamless and as easy as possible a process for pilgrims to transfer funds. There's a lot of questions. Pilgrims are going to continue asking questions. We're going to answer whatever we can. Rufaida, Sumendran, and Janil, I'm going to reach out to you with any of the more difficult ones, that we may have, so that you guys could possibly just, guide us in terms of that. I mean, I'll give you an example. Sumendran, thank you very much, for sending me the SARB regulations and the extracts a few days ago, so that we could familiarize ourselves again, with that information in order to guide the pilgrims as best and as easy as possible. Any last comments? We'll start with you, Janil.
No, thank you again for the opportunity, and for everyone on the call, and for your questions and for your engagement, and to my colleagues at the other banks as well. Thank you for your inputs. I note that we've all put our contact details in the chat as well, Shaheen. So everyone who has questions are more than welcome to reach out. Post the call.
Sumendran, from you?
Yeah, same. Just going through all of the questions. Guys, please reach out to me. I'll pop my email address on the chat. I'm going to try to get all of your details and respond based on those questions put there. As well as Shane, I'll run some stuff past you. I'll try to put a guide together tomorrow, which we could possibly distribute to all pilgrims here, just to answer any questions in the event that I've missed anything.
No, fantastic. Thank you very much for your participation. Rufeida, from you?
Just thank you so much for having us. We will give you as much input as possible to the questions or frequently asked questions. And from our Sharia team, our Standard Bank, we make lots of dua and we're thinking about all the potential pilgrims. And we hope that you are accepted, and where we can help to make your payment processes simpler, we are email and a phone call away.
Fantastic. Can I request what Sumendran mentioned? He's going to be putting some information together on a document, perhaps from you, Janil, and from you, Rufeida, so that we can have from all three of you, in terms of your processes specific to your bank. We understand the regulatory processes, but how it's going to be made easier. That way we can post it on our social media, platforms, as well as share it in our groups with pilgrims, so that they can have those FAQs or those, easy to use guides in terms of the process. I think that will help tremendously. And we certainly hope and pray that, those pilgrims participating tonight, have been given a little bit of guidance in terms of the process. Anybody who is still unclear and you're a banking client of either Absa, FNB, or Standard Bank, please, the details of these people have been put into the chat. Take down their details, reach out to them. If you're unclear, they'll give you the clarity, they'll give you the best channel that you can basically utilize in order to transfer the funds. Again, we want to make sure that we do not create anxiety. We want to make sure that people understand us. So please, there isn't a stupid question. A stupid question is one that is never asked. We must all ask whatever questions we want. These professionals are here to assist us to make our lives easier. Jazakallah khairan. Thank you very much, everybody, for your participation. I'm going to leave it at that unless there are any more questions. We've got another 5 minutes or so, but appreciate your participation and appreciate the sacrifice of your time. I mean, to you and your team, and to everybody at the various banks as well. Shaheen Suleiman, Aman, Mohammed, we have to acknowledge them because they helped to put this whole process together by sharing valuable people in their teams. Thank you. Good evening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant ease to our Hujjaj and grant the Hujjaj the understanding in order for them, to make sure that this is going to be a journey of a lifetime. And, on behalf of the South African Hajj and Umrah Council, we would like to say that this is the process according to which we are here to help, to guide, to bring in the professionals, in making sure that Hujjaj are going to be set at ease, inshallah. Shukran. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Before we sign off, a recording of this program will be made available on our social media platforms and will be shared, inshallah. Thank you very much. Have a lovely evening. Stay safe. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Thanks all. Bye-bye.